Westfield Rise are the internal agency for Westfield, so we operate across the US and 12 countries in Europe for all things media, brand partnerships, experiential and data solutions. So we've worked with a ton of brands and retailers to really try and bring great experiences out into the mall and surrounding areas. And what we're really noticing at the moment is a sort of retail Darwinism where consumer behaviours and expectations are fast outpacing how brands are reacting. So Westfield Rise are always trying to look for insight and trends to really help guide and make sure that our brands and retailers are really thriving in that retail space. Let's dive into Playtale. So we've seen, as Westfield Rise, as the agency, we've seen incredible growth over the last couple of years. How we foster community, give shoppers social value, and give, with brands and exciting retail activations and campaigns is, it's what we do. So it's really, especially even more important, as when we did a survey, almost half of UK consumers stated that the in-store experience is becoming boring. And that's really quite telling and quite, it's quite telling, and the future of retail really hinges on more excitement. Please. Audiences are really tuning out and craving something much more dynamic, and all is not lost. Obviously, interactions will be more important than transactions in physical spaces, and I think all is not lost because we've got wonderful people like Imagination who really lean into this trend. So the second trend is all around retail surgery. So this is very much a consumer-driven need, so tackling that pain point that people want to be in the driver's seat of their healthcare. And we're living in an age where accessible healthcare is expected to be on demand, and normalising and democratising that pursuit of self-care is ever more important. And they're looking to retail wellness hubs. They're looking for non-traditional settings. So 52% of the shoppers favour wellness hubs over GP clinics. 66% of Londoners opt for non-emergency healthcare in retail settings, including shopping centres. And I think that actually rises up to about 77% for millennials as well. And they just want to be, more in charge of how they deal with their health. And that's really seeing a huge growth in how it's presenting itself in the retail space. So, a clear response to those shifting demands is at Westfield in the Village, where our luxury brands are situated. We have dedicated 50,000 square foot to a health and wellness section. And it's like no other, where it really is changing the game and, and having a new wave of retailers. And the Eco-Fluency sort of revolution is being driven by a couple of pillars, one of which is around future-proofing and, how do we use AI in a more interesting and useful way. 85% of Londoners are interested in how brands use tech and AI to help them make more sustainable choices. It's huge. And Pre-Loved, I love Pre-Loved. The rise of it is amazing, and we're hitting this tipping point now, and the survey showed that more than half of Gen Z and millennials are now open to diverting the majority of their clothing spend to Pre-Loved. And it's a huge moment for the circular economy. And Westfield Rise have definitely seen a huge boost in events, new concepts, new companies around Pre-Loved coming into our spaces.
So three quick considerations here in terms of that piece about the sort of the social experience and the sort of Playtale. One, we shouldn't underestimate these micro interactions in terms of how important these are for us. They may seem meaningless to us if we're designing it, but as we are a social species, they're incredibly important for that sense that we are connecting socially. Those environments are fantastic for creating habits. Habits are a very particular type of behavior because habits don't require us to have an attitude. Habit just requires an environmental stimulus or a cue to fire that behavior. They give us as consumers meaning, which is great. They're about 50% of our behaviors. They are great also commercially because if you get consumers to act on habit, it's a lot harder for a competitor to try and disrupt that behavior through education or awareness around better product features or something better over here. And the third one we've already talked about a bit, this idea of social groups. We absolutely crave membership of groups because it removes social ambiguity. I know how to act in this group. It's the flip side of us being very social creatures. We hate the idea of not understanding what am I supposed to do at this particular moment. So social groups are very important. And probably one of the best examples, I think, of these social groups working well. So, 70 years ago, pretty much the day Disneyland opened its doors, a phenomenal success story. Why? Well, yes, the rides maybe and aspects of the experience, but there is a very plausible additional explanation, is that at this particular moment, the US was going through a period of huge social unrest. It was really socially ambiguous. No one quite knew what they were supposed to be doing. But going through the gates of Disneyland, suddenly I knew what I could do. I knew where I belonged. I knew what I could wear. I knew what I could eat. So there's a good argument that actually a huge factor that contributed to the success of Disneyland was the fact that it created this nice, unambiguous social group that you could get membership of simply by buying a ticket and going in.
So interesting. And relating that to micro-interactions, I think. The micro-interactions, I think often when you're designing experiences, you tend to think of what are the big experiences. But actually it's those really small moments, and Disney and Disneyland are just so good at it, and thinking of each of the small touch points and how you design those, to create the sense of social identity or consistency.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's one of the things about behavioural science. Behavioural science will always say, will this tiny interaction make a difference? In which case that warrants as much attention as the big, grand sort of gestures you make. Yeah. And very briefly, IKEA knows this very well. There's one particular study that is often called the IKEA effect, which shows the fact that actually if you put a little bit of effort into something, in this case assembling furniture, you appreciate the furniture more. So in one particular study, if you can get the table same table, pre-assembled versus you assembling it yourself at home, going through that process of exercising your autonomy, and maybe some other things in this case, means you appreciate the end product more. It's the effort-reward heuristic, but it often gets called the IKEA effect because it's a real thing. And again, it's slightly counterintuitive, but asking consumers to do a little bit of effort, a little bit of work, can be hugely beneficial in terms of the experience or how they experience the experience itself. On that point just there, as well as assembling that table, there's also what we call mastery, which is you're demonstrating a skill or an expertise. And I put this slide here because these three things, autonomy, mastery, and relatedness, are all components of something called self-determination theory, which is a great theory that explains our motivation to do anything. Very briefly, if I feel my autonomy is being protected or bolstered, I'm going to do it. If I think I can demonstrate a skill or I can learn a new skill, I'm going to do it. And the relatedness piece, if I get a sense that I belong or I become more important in that group, I'm going to do it. Those three things all drive what we call intrinsic motivation. And there's, I say, plenty of examples of where these things jump off the page and are actually genuinely useful in sort of real-world situations.
There's brands like Balenciaga that really tries very hard to make their shop look like a garage. It's like design cues of luxury have really changed to quite extreme examples. Even the very, very high-end brands are doing quite extreme things, which I think is, in my view, quite interesting. But one thing that we've been talking about, Sarah and I, is also about what does make the brand stand out. And I think talking about cues, Supreme is the cue specialist.
Yeah, Supreme is like great and masters of tapping into product and scarcity to drive hype, and they're the masters of that. I think it takes a very brave brand for when a certain product is flying off the shelf or selling like hotcakes, to then yank that merchandise off the shelves is pretty brave, and they're so great at it. Yeah, as we were going through these, it became kind of obvious that stores are not just stores anymore. There's like stores being used as a stage. They're being used as content studios. They're being used as like cultural gatherings. And even through some of my research, like Shiseido in Tokyo doesn't train any of their staff as salespeople. They train them as content creators in their own right and as influencers. So they encourage them to be on their phones in the store, creating content, building their own following, and using the store as their own performance space. And I just, it's such a interesting development, interesting evolution of retail.
I think it's such a useful framing for brands or for creatives thinking about it is don't think about it as a store. You know, you use the words it's a museum or you know, it's a stage. And I think that's what, if we go back to, you know, Grace and Guy, what you were saying, that's what kind of the mental bucket people are in, if that's a scientific term. And when they go, you know, it's not I'm going shopping. It's actually, you know, I'm going out for an experience, or you know, I want this kind of blurred, mixed experience of a museum-like or entertainment-like. The last thing that we wanted to do was just have a bit of a live demo of one of the prototypes that our labs team has built. We're really curious about AI and how it's going to shape experiences and how it can improve experiences and perhaps make them more magical for people. So one of the things that the team will be playing with is something we call conversational AI. So it's using the voice as the interface, and you know, starting to think about how you can have conversations with brands or use that as a way to improve the experience. So I think we have it up on screen now. We've built one especially for Westfield as a demo. It is a demo, so kind of white knuckle live demo, but let's give it a go. If we imagine, this is something that perhaps could be used, you know, in the shopping environment. So let's go. Let's give it a call.
Hello, are you ready to explore Westfield London? Tell me what you're looking for, and I'll help you find stores, discover promotions, or get directions to your favourite spots.
I'm at Westfield with 5 friends. We're into sports. What can you suggest that we do that's fun?
That sounds like fun. For a group of friends who are into sports, I highly recommend Toka Social. It's an immersive football, gaming, and dining experience that's perfect for a lively group. You could also check out Putt Shack for a game of mini golf or all-star lanes for bowling. Is there anything else I can help you with today?
What about lunch? One of my friends is vegetarian, but we like Italian food.
That's great. Italian food is a fantastic choice, and there are many options that cater to vegetarians. You could try Pizza Express or Pizza Pilgrims for delicious pizzas, or Zizi for a wider range of Italian dishes. Spaghetti House is another excellent option.
Fine. Thank you very much. Very helpful. So yeah, kind of interesting that you know you can have those sorts of interactions and you know use it as a way to perhaps plan your events, or you know and I always find it's kind of interesting. You could call it complementary AI, though it's sometimes perhaps a little too polite. But I don't know, Grace, like how do you see it? These sorts of tools, you know, are you seeing it being used?
Well, I think it's first and foremost it's fun, isn't it? And I think it could be the next evolution of wayfinding, using tech to bring in something a bit more exciting. Obviously, we have concierge, and how can we use that within there? But you know, retail groups within Westfield can start to use it on more of a personalised product sort of conversation, and being able to have it on your phone, and kind of not having to try and search for a totem pole to find where you are. That's really, really exciting. And you can think of all of the different languages that you can put it in, and you know the different voices and celebs and things that you can put it in. So it really opens up a whole new category of enhancing a retail experience.
I think also what's interesting is there is good research now that shows actually we're far less socially inhibited talking to chatbots than talking to a person. So actually you might get people asking questions in this environment that you wouldn't get ordinarily because they don't want to do it.